This week's parsha is Kitetze Muhammad, and I always think this time of year when we have these parshas, Kitetze is about going out, and Kisava is about coming in. And a lot of the mitzvahs about in Kitetze have to do with going out to war, getting divorced, a lot of things. Going off the derech, children going off the derech, Ben Saramar. If you look through the parsha, that's a major theme in the parsha is going out, and Kisava is about coming back in. There's a lot to talk about in the parsha, especially during these days of El. But I want to focus on something that really caught my eye this morning, which is a Pella Rashi. The Chumash says like this, very famous psukim here. It's in Chaf Gimel, Dalet, and Hey. The Torah says, "Lo yabu amoinim oavi b'kal Hashem, gam dor asiri lo yabu lehem b'kal Hashem ad olam." You shouldn't take Ammon and Moab into the Kal Hashem, even the 10th generation, which means forever. They can't come in it. We know it's dafka the males and not the females. And what's the reason for that? So the Torah says, because they didn't give you bread and water. Right? They didn't give you bread and water. And it sounds like a little bit harsh, Doesn't sound like it's such a big deal, not giving you bread and water, But all of the Baalei Musar say that's how far Klal Yisrael goes. That's how far the inyan of a curse, the idea of a curse tov goes, that lechem umayim, right? Because Ammon and Moab, they owe their existence to Lot and the family of Avram Avinu. That's how far it goes. But you look at Rashi. Rashi says something very interesting here, right? On the words al dvar, which is al dvar shelo kidmu eschem belechem umayim. Yeah. So Rashi says al dvar ala eitza shiyatzu eschem lachtichem. On the advice that they gave you to be machti you. Yeah. That's not, even though it's going on the words. Yeah. It's going on the words that they weren't machtim al asher lo kadmu eschem belechem umayim. Rashi explains those words. Now, could be maybe there's a chule here that's missing or something like that. But Pashup Pshat and Rashi, ala eitzah shiyotzu eschem lachtichem. Right? The eitzah, which was the eitzah of Bilam, which it says here at the end. Yeah? Vasher sachar aleches Bilam ben Boor. Yipater am nerayim l'klalim. So it sounds like from Rashi that there's some kesher between these two things. Between not giving you bread and water and hiring Bilam. So the Kli Yakar says, Kedarka B'Kodesh, very interesting shot. He says one really caused the other. Because since they didn't have bread and water, they were really thirsty in the Midbar, right? I remember when we went to Arizona, so we went to Death Valley in the desert. It was 110 degrees in the shade. It's like really, the desert is like a hot place. So they were really thirsty and they were really hungry. And when they got to Moav, and they offered them wine and food, non-kosher wine, yain shel akum. So that caused them to be chayte. They were able to persuade them to be chayte so that's the connection. I think it's a little bit sarchian. I saw Beina Bechaya points out, they didn't really need lechem mayim. They had man, right? They had man and they had the bear. So it wasn't like they were starving or anything. So it seems like this was purely, how do they call that? Like a gesture. Someone says this. It's like the impulse. I remember when one of the donors made a bar mitzvah in the Waldorf Astoria. So my wife and I spent Shabbos in the Waldorf Astoria. And like each person has a personal assistant. You walk in the hotel and, hello, I'm your personal assistant, and takes care of everything for you. Chas v'shalom, it's like you have to carry your bags to the room in the Waldorf Astoria. So it seems more like that's really what's going on here. The lechem umayim is more like a gesture of showing appreciation for the fact that we exist. Okay, but it's Sarahian. So what's going on here? What does Rashi mean? Rashi means the Sifsei Chachamim says something here. I wasn't going to figure it out completely what he's talking about here, but maybe someone could take a look and figure it out. Okay. In any event, I want to suggest as follows, I think it's emes pshat, is that what Rashi is coming to tell you, what the Torah is coming to tell you, is what's the shirish? What's the shirish of being machte? What's the shirish of being machte Klal Yisrael? What's the shorish of it? Where does it come from? To hire Bilam to destroy the Jewish people. Yeah, he tried many times. Uh, Bilam tried many times to curse Klal Yisrael. It wasn't Matzliach. He tried once. He tried twice. He tries a third time. Each time comes out a nicer and nicer words for Klal Yisrael. So he says, you know what? We'll try a different approach. We'll just try Snos. So where did that come from? Yeah, where did it come from that they hired Bilam for this reason? So the pashtus, I think Rashi means is that the shurish, the roots, is from a lack of a karsatov. Because if Ammon and Moab had understood that they owe everything to Klal Yisrael, then you wouldn't be able to try to destroy them. Yeah, when you understand that you owe everything to somebody, then the last thing you do is to try to destroy them. Right? That's and Lefini's daiti. That's the pshat. The shurish adam, getting to the shurish. Now there's another omik over here, which I believe I heard this once from Ruch from Lubavitch. He says it a little bit over here as well. Is that hakaras hatayv? Yeah. What happens if you're not makar tov? What if someone does you a favor and you don't makar tov for it? There's a famous story with the Chasim Sofer. He was walking once in Pressburg, and someone started screaming at him. Yeah. And he says, I don't know why he's screaming. I didn't even do him any favors. Yeah. And the pshat is that when you do a chesed for somebody, right, that person, the recipient, feels a shtabdus. Feels like, oh, I owe you something. And I owe you something. Rabbi Weinreich just told me, I was looking for the phrase, in the business world, in law, there's an expression called quid, what is it called? Quid pro quo. Say that. Quid pro quo. And it means that, you scratched my back, I'll scratch your back, basically. Meaning, I owe you a favor. Right? If someone does something for you, you owe them a favor. That's a karsatov. What happens if you don't do the favor back to them? What happens is that I feel like really indebted to you, and that gives me a really bad feeling. You have to feel indebted to someone. And eventually, if it doesn't come out as good, it's going to come out as bad. And that's what the Chasim Sofer was saying. Right? If you do a chesed for someone, yeah, and the recipient doesn't reciprocate, then he's in great danger of eventually one day getting back at the person. I remember there was when I have to be careful how I'm speaking. There was once a person who got very upset at me for a certain reason, and for many years he didn't talk to me. And then one day I get a phone call. Hello, Rabbi Travis, how are you doing? How's everything? And I said, I need a favor from you. He needed a certain letter. I said, I'll give you a favor, but only if we clear the slate. Oh, fine, sure, clear the slate. Okay. I did the favor for him, and again, he hasn't spoken to me in the past 7-8 years. So, that's the way it goes. You do a favor for somebody, they feel indebted to you, and then it's all over. Right? See, it's very important to know for the giver and very important for the taker. Because when you give to someone and they say, oh, thank you so much. No, it's nothing. Right? Someone told me once, it's nothing means no, I want you to be a slave to me for the rest of my life. If you don't let someone reciprocate, that basically means that you want them to feel meshubah to you. You're waiting for that really big favor to ask them, that could force you to do something which you don't really want. So that's as far as these psukim go. And we know, Akaras Tov, the Chalot says it's the Yisod of the whole Torah. Our whole Avodas Hashem is based on Akaras Tov. Right? If we're not Makar Tov to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so eventually the opposite's going to happen. We're going to rebel against him. And that's why it's so critical to feel that Argosh. That's one side over here. Another point that I think we can bring out from this, which I think is so critical, we're all trying to do tshuva, and some of us have bad midas. Anybody here have bad midas? Anyone have anything to work on? Right. We all have what to work on. Right? So how do you work on something? How do you change? Right? How do you change yourself? But Yisrael Salanter said it's harder to change one midah than finish Shas. And he didn't mean he finished Shas Daf Yomi B'kiyas. He meant finishing a B'iyum. It's harder to change one midah than finish Shas B'iyum. So how do you do it? What's the plan? So Phoenix Daiti, I can't really tell you this because I don't know if I ever changed myself. But you have to get, like Rashi's saying, you have to get to the Shorish Adam. If it's true by something bad, it's certainly, it's certainly true by a bad midah. Right? You have to get to the Shorish. You want to change yourself, you have to get to the Shorish of where it's coming from. A person has a certain thing that he does over and over and over again. Why are you doing that? Right? remember there's a certain taxi driver, like a really big smoker, and I always told him, this person, I said, look, you have to stop smoking. I said, I'm gonna lend you the money to have a program in Hadassah and Kerem. I think it's 1,500 shekels for 3 sessions, and or maybe it's even more money. But the idea is you're paying so much money. If you don't do it, you feel stupid, right? And they give you good techniques, but to stop smoking, because otherwise it's going to kill you, right? It says, it's like an amazing thing. It says on the package, cigarettes, right? Smoking will kill you, right? These cigarettes will make you die. People still do it because, well, one cigarette is not going to make me die. Anyway, so how do you get to it? You have to find out, like, where is it coming from? You feel nervous, or you feel this, or you need something. It's always coming from some shurish. If you just try to stop smoking, it's not going to work. You have to get to the shurish hadavar. That's the way you get rid of your bad midos and averos. And this sefer that I put out, Praying with Joy 3, yeah, basically was my discovery about the Vidoy tefillah. If you look in the Vidoy, the averos, at least by Ashkenazim, are paired up, right, on the al chaitz, right. So look, and my hiddush was that why do you have pairs of two? It's coming to tell you the shor shachetz, lamashal. Al chetz shechatanu lefanecha b'maaseh u'maden. Al chetz shechatanu lefanecha b'machal mishteh. Right. The averos that we did with business and the averos we did with food and drink. So I brought here from the Chavetz Chaim in Sfas Tamim chapter Parak Hey. Most averos in money come because you want a better life. You want fancy food, vacations, whatever it might be. So the shorsh hadavar, if you realize that you're stealing and it might be b'shogeg or whatever it is, but maybe you have too much desire for olam hazeh. That's really the place to work on. The place to work on is not necessarily the food, right? It might be where is it coming from, right? It's a gezel. Where is it coming from? And you always have to look there and try to figure out. I remember one year. I was davening in a little shul at the bottom of Nivei Yaakov, and I hadn't yet thought of a Kabbalah. The Bali Musar all say it's really important to think of a Kabbalah before Yom Kippur. Why? Because one area you should work on really well, right? Which is Charata, Vidoy, Asifas Achetz, and Kabbalah also. So one area. I hadn't yet thought of what I was going to do. So I said, you know what, Hashem, maybe give me a hint. I went to the bookshelf and I took off one sefer. I opened it up, and it came out to a certain meat. I said, "This is a mistake. Couldn't be, Anyway, it was like Oracle Sadiqim. I took another tape off, opened it up, like the same exact meter. Wow, that's interesting. Like, what's the chances of that happening? Pretty rare, right? But still, it could be. Smikra. I did it a third time, and it came out to the exact same meter. And I thought about it. I said, you know what? I really do have that meter. Like, I'm fooling myself. So that's really it. With tshuva, a lot of times we fool ourselves. We think these are the things I need to work on, right? But really, we're missing the point. Right? Really, it's shidchi, because you're looking at just what are you doing, right? And the question is not what are you doing, but the question is why are you doing that? What's motivating you? What's pushing you, right? Why? What's buried underneath here that I really have to work on? And if you do that, then you have a lot more atzlacha in your tshuva process, because that way you could really work on yourself. Yeah, if you just try to get rid of the hates, it doesn't work. You'll see it just keep coming back again and again and again and again. It's like a guy who comes to the dentist, like, and this tooth is like killing him. Oh, I feel like agony, one time I came home, I'm living in the Vayakov, I came home, I had a massive headache, and we had a visitor from Chutzlar's, and she said, I'll give you an aspirin, So or some really strong painkiller. I took it, it just got worse and worse. It was meningitis, right? You can't treat meningitis with an aspirin. You have to go to the hospital immediately. So what happened? I was up the whole night, and it got worse and worse. And finally in the morning, I went to daven chakras. And after chakras, I crawled on the ground to Dr. Leibowitz's office, and I just collapsed in front of his door. And he said, "Oh, good morning." Oh, he said, "It's not humanly possible. You have meningitis. It's not humanly possible to daven chakras." I said, "But I did." Okay, so I guess you're not human. Right? So he calls the ambulance, and they take an hour, and they take me to the emergency room, I got there, and they said, "You don't really have meningitis. You're faking it." I said, "Maybe just could be really polio, but maybe just check just in case." And they checked, Baruch Hashem, and they had it, so they hospitalized me. But the point is, if you have meningitis, it won't help you to take a Tylenol. Not even, what did she give me? An Optalgin, or I don't know, something even stronger. It won't help. You're gonna die, right? So it's the same thing with hate, right? If you try to take, you know, aspirin, Tylenol for your chatoim, they're not gonna go away. You have to figure out what's going on inside yourself, which is really causing these averas, right? Um, okay, so I'm just opening up Tumas Vasayim, the Tifshus Pat, right? So Lamaisa, a lot of our averas in Dibor, right? They come from other places, like I said here in the beginning. Bitois Vasayim, Blidas. Most averas in Dibor come because you just don't think. The Ramban says before you say anything, just think about it for 1 second, and probably you won't say most things. Yeah, because most things shouldn't be said, at least if they're about other people. So this is, I think, a limit atzim, and that's what I think Rashi's saying. Right? Rashi's saying that the shirish of the Chet Bilam came from a lack of a karasato. Yeah, and really, all our bears have a shirish, and we have to get to the shirish. And that's what really El is about. El is trying to figure out what's the shirish. Where are these averas coming from? And it was very interesting. About, I don't know, it was Bein Zmanim. I have Cheshvan Nefesh from 25 years, and I noticed basically the same averas coming up over and over again, with some improvement, right? And that's the point. The point is to try to find a strategy before Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, to try to find a strategy that's going to work to get out of the averas. And it's not pashut. If you think it's hard to learn Hilchas Taras Mishpacha and to do a test on it and get tzmicha and write your tshuva on it, whatever, it's kids play. Can I get change it yourself? People are really complicated. They're really, really complicated. And that's what Yisrael Salanter was saying. Yisrael Salanter one time, there was someone trying to destroy the Muslim movement. So what did he do? Right? He was giving a shir kloli in Lumdus. They put up a list of marmakomos, 30 marmakomos he put up. So at the last minute, someone came and just changed it. And he put up random marmakomos in Shas. So Yisrael takes a look, thinks for 5 seconds, and he goes ahead and gives the most amazing shir, tying together completely unrelated marmakomos in Lumdus. So they asked him afterwards, Rebbe, okay, so what was the 5 seconds? What were you doing during those 5 seconds? He said, I was thinking, is it gaiva to do this? And I decided, for the sake of the Muslim movement, that people should know the importance of learning Muslim, it was all right. Yeah? So that was it. So Rabbi Yisrael's Salanter was a go nuts. There was a go nuts. We don't have his writings on Shas, but he was a go nuts. And yet, he used his goiness to work on himself and to show people how they should work on themselves. And as his Talmud, Yitzhak Blazer said, he said if Darwin would have met my Rebbe, he would never say people are from an ape. Yeah? Because he was so intricate and such an amazing person. So that's really the avoda of the next weeks before we come to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, is to try to figure out what's happened, what's going on. Why am I doing these things over and over and over again? How can I change? Yeah? And Mizrat Hashem, whoever works on it will be successful. The best way really to find out, someone came to me recently, and I kind of battered them. I felt this was the person who would take it, so they got battered. We'll see if he comes back. But the point is, after we finished, he said, "You told me I have 7 points. Can you write them down so I can work on them?" I was impressed with that. So the thing is, if you really want to know what you're doing wrong, right, the best way to find out is how. Anyone have any ideas? Ask your wife. Video, right? Ask your wife. Or now, the truth is, a wife though should not ask her husband. Right? A wife shouldn't ask her husband. There's a story I read about there was a group of women. They were working on themselves, and they were supposed to ask their husbands to give them 6 things that they have to change. So there was one husband who was really smart, right? The next morning, his wife woke up and there was a vase there with 6 roses, and he said, "I like you just the way you are." And she said, "Oh, it's good because I wouldn't be able to take it." Women do not appreciate getting feedback from their husbands. And I'll tell you the truth also, if the women listening to this, Men do not like getting feedback from their wives. Rav Safrani told me the best way to have shalom bias is the men should work on their issues and the women should work on issues, and then it'll be perfect. But occasionally, women let themselves slip, and they might say the truth about their husbands, even though they can't take it. That's a really good way to find out what you should really work on. I'll just finish off with a very important Rabbeinu Yonah in Mishlei. He says, "Kol derech ish yoshev be'einav." Everybody thinks that they are fine. Yeah. So ask Rabbeinu Yonah, it's like, what are you supposed to do? Like Rebbe used to say, with the men, I have a constitutional right. So I'm always right. Yeah. So says Rabbeinu Yonah, says Tochen libos Hashem. Hashem knows the truth about you, and He'll show you. Like I say always, right? If you've been handed 10 copies of Chavetz Chaim recently, maybe you should think about how you're speaking, your lashon hara. So the truth will be in this gala, right? A person who's really looking for the truth about himself, it'll come out. It'll be in this gala. So Hakadosh Baruch Hu should help us. All of us should try or have the tiyat d'shmaya to figure out what we really need to work on. Number one. Number two, be able to be mamik in ourselves to understand it. It definitely helps to speak to Talmidei Chachamim who are experienced in this area. It help you to get to the Shorish Hadavar. Number two. And number three, you should find favor in Hashem's eyes and be zoichet to ksiva chasim atayva ben